The Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Have you ever paused to think about what it means to be truly great? In our world today, greatness is often measured by how much power we wield, how much recognition we get, or how many people are below us. Yet, the question remains, is that what greatness is truly about? Now, today I want to take you on a journey through the Gospel of Mark, specifically chapter 9, where Jesus redefines greatness in a way that turns worldly thinking upside down. In this chapter, we find profound moments that challenge our understanding of faith, power, and service. Each of these moments offers us a blueprint for living lives of true greatness. Greatness that is found not in what we achieve for ourselves, but in what we do for others. So let's explore three key lessons from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, the Transfiguration, the healing of the boy with an unclean spirit, and Jesus' call to servanthood. These passages have timeless messages that speak to us today as clearly as they did when Jesus first taught them. The Transfiguration, a glimpse of Jesus' glory. Now, we begin with one of the most dramatic and awe-inspiring events in the New Testament, the Transfiguration. Jesus takes three of his disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a high mountain. As they watch, something incredible happens. Jesus' appearance changes. His clothes become dazzling white, brighter than anything they had ever seen. Suddenly, two of the greatest figures in Jewish history, Moses and Elijah, appear, talking with Jesus. Peter, overwhelmed, suggests they build shelters to mark the sacred moment. But then a cloud covers them, and a voice from heaven says, "This is my Son, whom I love. Listen to him." Now, the Transfiguration gives us a profound glimpse into the divine nature of Jesus. He is not merely a wise teacher or a prophet. He is the Son of God, full of glory and majesty. This moment reminds us that our faith is not rooted in just another historical figure, but in the living, eternal God. The disciples were given this vision to strengthen their faith, and in the same way, we are called to recognize that our faith is more than rituals or traditions. It's about seeing Jesus for who he really is, the glorious, powerful Son of God, who invites us into a relationship that can transform our lives. The challenge for us is to look beyond the ordinary and see the divine work of God in our everyday lives. The Transfiguration invites us to elevate our faith, to see Jesus not only as a friend, but as the King of Kings, deserving of our complete trust and devotion. The healing of the boy with an unclean spirit, the power of faith. As they descend from the mountain, Jesus and the disciples are met by a crowd where a dramatic scene unfolds. A desperate father has brought his son, who is possessed by a spirit that causes him convulsions and suffering. He brings him to the disciples for healing first, but despite their best efforts, the disciples are unable to heal the boy. In frustration and despair, the father turns to Jesus, saying, "If you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." Jesus responds with a powerful challenge. If you can, everything is possible for one who believes. The Father then speaks one of the most honest and heartfelt prayers in all of Scripture. "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." Jesus, seeing the man's sincerity, rebukes the spirit, and the boy is miraculously healed. Now, this story teaches us two profound lessons about faith. First, it reminds us that faith in Jesus can overcome even the most impossible situations. Now, it wasn't the disciples' lack of effort that caused them to fail, but their lack of faith. Jesus wants us to understand that true faith isn't about how much we can do on our own, but about how much we trust God to do through us. The second lesson is about vulnerability. The Father's prayer, "I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief," shows that faith isn't always perfect or complete. Sometimes we struggle to fully trust God, and that's okay. God doesn't ask for perfect faith. He asks for honest faith. When we bring our doubts, fears, and uncertainties to Him, He meets us where we are and helps us grow. This should encourage us to bring even our smallest faith and trust that God will use it to move mountains in our lives. The call to servanthood, true greatness in God's kingdom. The final lesson comes from a conversation Jesus has with His disciples as they journey to Capernaum. Along the way, the disciples had been arguing about something. Who among them was the greatest? This might sound familiar to us. We too can fall into the trap of comparison, wondering if we are better than others, whether in our jobs, relationships, or status. But when they arrive at their destination, Jesus asks them what they were arguing about. The disciples, embarrassed, remain silent. But Jesus knows their hearts, and He uses this moment to teach them a lesson that would shape their understanding of leadership and greatness forever. He sits down, calls the 12 to Him, and says, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last, and the servant of all." Then, as if to illustrate His point, Jesus takes a small child in His arms and says, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me." Now, what Jesus is teaching here is revolutionary. Greatness in God's kingdom doesn't come from status, wealth, or power. It comes from humility. The world tells us that we need to climb higher, but Jesus says true greatness is found in how low we are willing to go in serving others. The greatest leaders are those who serve with love, without seeking recognition or reward. And the child in this scene symbolizes vulnerability and humility. In the culture of that time, children were not given much importance. But Jesus is saying that we must welcome, care for, and serve those who are often overlooked. The call to servanthood is not glamorous, but it is where we find true fulfillment. When we place others above ourselves, we reflect the heart of Jesus, who came not to be served, but to serve. So, what does the Gospel of Mark chapter 9 teach us about greatness? It's not found in seeking glory for ourselves, but in recognizing the glory of God in Jesus, trusting Him with our whole heart, and humbling ourselves to serve others. So, as you leave here today, I challenge you to rethink what greatness looks like in your life. Are you striving to elevate yourself, or are you seeking to elevate others? Do you see faith as something to wield for personal gain, or are you trusting God to work through your weaknesses? And are you willing to embrace the true path of greatness, which is servanthood? Now, the next time you face a difficult decision, remember the words of Jesus. If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last, and the servant of all. Let these lessons sink deep into your heart, and may they transform the way you live and lead. You know, true greatness isn't about how much we can achieve for ourselves, but how much we can give of ourselves to others. Thank you, And may God bless you on each step of your journey towards true greatness. Because you know what? If anybody's worth it, you are. I'll be back tomorrow and we'll discuss chapter 10. Have a beautiful day, my friends.